Welcome to the DJ Insider Podcast, sponsored by Amplified Events.
It's the only podcast where we break down insider information from our weddings, experiences, and advice from over 15 years in the wedding industry.
We're your hosts. I'm Maycen, owner of Amplified Events.
And I'm Chris Zart, general manager of Amplified Events.
Let's get into it. Okay, well, we are back. And once again, in the studio, we have Maycen Raycroft from Raycroft Recordings. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And so, last time we kind of introduced you and talked a little bit about your services, kind of how you got into it. And we thought it'd be fun to get a little more deeper into some other topics that involve DJing and videography and, weddings. And so the first thing we kind of talked about was like music choice. Mm-hmm. And of course, the DJ side of things, we know like music, choosing the next song that's going to keep that crowd going makes a big difference. But you have kind of a different experience with that with videography. Mm-hmm. What on your end, kind of what does that look like?
So anytime like I meet with a couple, I'll ask them within the first meeting, like, what kind of music do you guys typically listen to? And I get 3 different responses. One is like, oh, everything, maybe except for like rap or something, maybe like country, or I'll get a lot of Bridgerton people because they're thinking wedding.
Yeah.
And then I'll get people like, I listen to this, this, and this, but I like don't use that for the video kind of thing. And so the reason I ask is just to get a better idea of like the personality, but then pairing that with like what is going to sound, pleasurable to them in their video versus not. And I'll get a lot of people who say like, oh, country is what they listen to and they would like to hear it in their video. And then I'm like, okay, well, what if I found a song where the message like matched your story, but it was more of like indie folksy? Like, would that be okay with you, or do you want to steer clear for that? Because some people who listen to country are like, yeah, that's totally fine. They like the acoustic aspect of it. And other people are like, no, like that's not what I like, which I've had to learn like as I go on. So I like ask those weird questions about it. So yeah, getting to know that ahead of time, like as I'm going through like my music, like platforms leading up to the wedding and after the wedding, it gives me a better idea of like what I'm listening for. So I like to ask that as early on as possible, because I might hear something come up when I'm like not intentionally looking for it. And then I can like save it to their file and be like, okay, let's try matching that with whatever I get on their day. And I can even like thinking about the music that I've heard on the wedding day is something that I've started doing. And that's helped a lot, like pairing the visuals with audio.
Will you, when you're shooting, is there, I assume your brain's kind of always like thinking about this and planning for, when you're shooting, are you always planning as well as like how you're going to edit it? And then along that, even a step further, what music that you'll use for that scene possibly, or what kind of feel you're going for?
Yeah, usually I do. If it's like more of a go, go, go moment of the day, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm just like, my first priority is always the client. And then next to that, like the vendors I'm working with.
Yeah, capturing the moments.
Yeah. So like the live eventness of it and people's feelings is like what I'm considering the most in the moment. But then, like underneath that, I'm thinking about the composition of the moment of my frames. And then what kind of vibe are we looking to accomplish here? Like, okay, is this like a silhouette at a window of her like getting her dress on? Okay, that's more moody. Okay, I'm thinking more drama, so I'm leaning more towards classical music in that aspect. Or, like out on the dance floor, like, oh my gosh, this is very high energy, like rave kind of moment. So we're going upbeat, maybe a little more techno. And like, I'm thinking about that in the moment, but not like consistently.
Yeah.
Just like as it kind of happens and like, I'm like, oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well, that's not an easy thing. It's very similar. You're basically DJing the wedding film too when you're editing it, because you are picking a sound that feels right for what's going on. The emotions you're trying to have come through, what's happening in the video, the content of it all. And so some of it, I imagine, is similar to a music video. You set a song and you just go over some images, but then you're also working in, quotes from speeches, like audio drops from the day, or from the ceremony or stuff like that to kind of, capture that moment, capture the best things about that day and to give it. But the music choice is really important. And we see that on the DJ side of things too. If I play a song, like you got a ramped up, excited crowd, and then I play a slow song, that's going to bring that energy down. It feels wrong. Or, and something you said earlier that just made me think of it too, is that like, sometimes people like music, right? They like a certain type of music or they like a certain artist, but that doesn't translate well to dancing. Or, I think there's a lot of country artists that have, they're very talented, but they're not really danceable songs. There's some rock songs like that too, where it's like, this is not really a dance, it's more of a sing-along, which is great. But, if people like just play this artist or just play this genre, that really keeps you from, you're missing out. You're leaving something extra there that you could get more out of that crowd or get more energy. And in some ways, it feels wrong. This doesn't feel like the right energy, the right music for this moment. As DJs, we want to kind of always be building to that kind of end of the night crescendo where it's just that release of energy. Do you find that in a similar way when you're editing? Like, I don't know if you start a video with like, I don't know. Do you have a kind of a process to that? I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah. So typically, like, I'll try and find like key moments from throughout the day that could be like the climax of the film, where like the really big hit in the music or like transition from the slower build into like the upbeat, okay, like they got married. And usually like that climax is like the announcement at the end of the ceremony and the kiss. And then sometimes I'll transition it into, if they do like an introduction into the reception, like walking down the aisle from walking into the reception kind of thing. And that helps, like, it makes sense to the viewer because, okay, like naturally, like that progression makes sense. But then also with the music, what I've learned to start doing is looking at the key that the music is in and then finding either the same key or a similar key on like the wheel and for the songs from one song to the next. So that way I can like seamlessly transition them and it kind of sounds like the same song, but then once you get into it, you know that it's not. So that helps like with transitions throughout the day too. But yeah, definitely like looking for those building, you're getting ready during the day, building up to, okay, we're setting the scene for the ceremony. Okay, people are entering the ceremony. And a big moment is obviously like the bride or groom walking down the aisle. And then that kiss. And then after that, it's just like, okay, what's the reception look like? Let's set that scene. I've started like sprinkling speeches throughout. So it's not all chronological order because some speeches are describing like who these people are that we're focused on. And so I feel like it's good to have that information like more towards the beginning. And it helps like set the scene of like, okay, like who is this? What is the story behind them? And it just like makes more sense as you keep watching.
Yeah. I noticed the best speeches have that ability where they help tell the story of the couple leading up to, and then you're getting to, it's kind of almost a meta moment where they're talking about how the couple met or the couple's character in some way. And then you're getting up those show shots of the couple on this day. And like, this is what it was all leading to, So great speech can really add a lot to a great, film, as well as to great wedding, set that tone. About the music. So we run into this and we ran into this on the podcast where Chris and I, there was an episode we did where it got flagged by YouTube because we were playing little clips of music that we didn't license. And so YouTube's like, you can't have that, even though we're not a for-profit podcast, doesn't matter. You don't own that content. Do you ever run into that on editing side of things, using licensing music and issues with that?
I'm glad that you bring that up. So I have never published a wedding film to where it included copywritten music because it's something I learned about in college more, and I don't remember all the details now, but I know like what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
I pay for subscriptions to have the licensing to the music that I use. So I mostly utilize a website called MusicBed. But there's also Soundstripe, which also has sound effects on there that I use, which is really nice. And then another one that I've kind of used is like artlist.io, which has sound effects too. But I definitely prefer, like, MusicBed has such a strong like library, especially for wedding films. And so like everything on there, because of the account I have for wedding videos, when I download and license a song, I license it for the specific project. So if you were to go like on my YouTube page and look in the description, there's like a code at the bottom and a statement that says it's licensed through the platform. And so that is like a code to that platform saying like, I have paid for this music.
So I own it.
I own
distribute
it.
it.
Yeah. So where it gets tricky when people are like, oh, I really like this Taylor Swift song or this Bridgerton cover or something. Like, that is copywritten music with so many royalties. You like, in order to be able to use that kind of music, you have to typically reach out to the artist directly or a representative of them, and then pay like a lot. Like, it differs with who the artist is or what the song is, but you have to pay for that music, and then it takes like 3 to 6 months to process that and get approved and all that, if you get approved. So that's not a process that I go through with my films, because I know like there's other music out there. And it's really good. Just because you don't hear it on the radio, like, doesn't mean it shouldn't be used. So that is something where I haven't run into it with films. Growing up, like in high school, I would make music videos like for fun and stuff. And I have been flagged a couple times through YouTube, but I didn't know any better, because I was just like making it for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't for profit, but now obviously like this is my business. So I'm like, I'm not trying to mess with that, not trying to get my stuff taken down.
Right.
I want people to, share it with their family.
But that's a big thing a lot of people don't consider when they're making a wedding film. You see people, I want this Ed Sheeran song. Well, you have to actually contact Ed Sheeran's people and pay for the rights to use that in your film. You can find, this is what's great though, is there's a lot of artists who may sound like have an Ed Sheeran sound that they write for this purpose. They make a whole living where they just write songs that people can license easily and quickly, and then they get paid a fee each month or whatever for the usage of that. We use Artlist as well for all of our posted videos and stuff. That because it's easy, and when you buy the same thing, have the licensing fee. Now I can prove that I do own the rights to this. I can use this, But a lot of people don't realize that, and I see a lot of younger people getting into filming, and then you see they post their videos. I'm like, oh, that's a licensed song that I know that they didn't pay the rights to. Well, I guess I don't know, but I assume, because I'm like, who's got the budget for that? It's thousands of dollars. It's not like a little bit of money. You think about any TV show or movie, and they use a song, they have to pay for that. And like you said, get approval, get written approval, how they're going to use it, that kind of thing.
Even like coaching dance, like I had to figure out what kind of music we wanted for competitions, and we did like pom and hip hop. And so there were always like mixes, and I paid a company to create the mixes, because I don't have that kind of skill. But for each song that we used, and I would use 4 to 5 songs in each mix for like a 2-minute routine, I had to pay $25 for the copyright. So, because they were like Pitbull songs and stuff, but they were still like kind of covers, so it kept it on the cheaper side. But only if you really listened to that sample would like, that's not Pitbull. But yeah, like just even seeing that, it's like it can get really pricey. We had to pay like $100 just for the licensing part of it, not even like the service of like mixing. So
I guess, and rightfully so in some ways, that people are creating this art. They should be paid for it. There's that whole argument right now about AI. Nashville just took steps to protect recording artists with music from AI, like renditions of their songs, that kind of thing.
Good.
It's crazy what you can do with that stuff. You can have, Frank Sinatra be singing stuff by the Beatles or whatever. It's wild.
That's kind of creepy to think about.
But I think like music can basically make or break a dance floor. Picking the right songs at the right time. Do you see that on the editing side of things with your films?
Yeah, I actually recently, a film that I worked on, I like had edited it all. It was done. I was doing like the coloring, and then I was watching it back, and I was like, I just am not feeling this song. So I took it apart and I like found new music. And it takes me forever to find music when like the vibes change drastically through the day. When it's like, oh, super heartfelt, super sweet, like with grandma. And then it's like, oh, this is a rager, like all your friends from college are here, drinks are flowing. And so it's like to find that happy balance. And also it's like, okay, we want this to be a timeless, like family heirloom that you're going to like show your future children. And so I'm like, well, I got to keep it, reasonable. But yeah, the song wasn't matching. And so I like took it apart and redid it all. But I like to find my music before I start doing like the film itself.
Oh, okay.
Just so it helps me with like the vibe. People do it different ways, but I'll like edit like the key moments from the day. So the ceremony, 3 camera angles, speeches, 2, 3 camera angles, all the audio. I'll figure out at, beginning, middle, end, where do I want these things? And then find the music and then kind of match it up to like the build and the music kind of stuff or the transitions. And then from there, I'm just kind of flowing. Like there's so much to go through, but yeah, definitely like it helps me once I have the music, it helps me like get into a groove with it. And I feel like in the end, when there is that groove and that flow, like as I'm working on it, like once I watch it back, I feel like it's a much better product than if I were to try and like do most of the work and then add music. Cause then it's like, as I'm working, they're complementing each other, the visual and the audio.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's really going to make you feel something. The music is setting the underlying feelings of what's happening. It's all contributing, of course. But yeah, that's similar. People are, there's just an energy you're picking up. If you're a good DJ, you're observant and you're watching and listening to what the crowd's doing and seeing, well, he needs a little bit of more of this, or we need to come down. We have too much. We need, it's that build and the tension and release of the energy using the music to kind of set that tone. And so, that makes sense where you would, that's kind of my question. You kind of led right into it, which is, do you pick the song and then try to edit around the song? Cause that's going to be easier because you have almost kind of a template for the tension and release of the energy of the song.
Yeah.
So it's, I have a sweet moment right here. I have so many to pick from. Let's do that one, or have a quick speech line I want to put underneath that because that's a really beautiful, poignant part.
And even like the beats of the music too, like if it's like a high tempo thing that if I'm like, okay, I want to make my cuts to the beat, then I kind of need to know what the beat is to do that. And like I have had people come back and be like, hey, I'm not a huge fan of this song with it. Can we switch it? Yeah, it's going to take a little longer, but yeah, I can switch it. And I've had people ask to like hear the music before I start working on the edit, which I understand to a certain extent because it's like, well, you want to make sure you like it. But what I've found is that people are much more likely to like the music paired with the visual versus without. And I was thinking about this before coming here. And then I heard yesterday on the radio, there's that newer song called End of Beginning. It's like the When I'm Back in Chicago song. And it's all over TikTok right now. And I heard it for the first time on the radio yesterday.
Is that that Joe Keery guy?
Yeah, I think so. The Stranger Things guy.
Yes, yeah.
So heard it for the first time on the radio, my first time hearing the whole song. And I was like, oh yeah, like I like the song. But I was like, I don't think I would like it as much if I hadn't seen it paired with everyone's videos on TikTok because it had that emotional impact for me of like reminiscing on things or Chicago on St. Patrick's Day or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
And so like I had those visuals in my head and so I like paired it with that song when I heard it, even like the parts that I hadn't heard before. But I was like, if I had heard this song for the first time on its own, no visuals, would I like it as much as I do? And I think the answer is no. And so I've stopped sending people music before editing. And instead I'll utilize like the sneak peek to see like, okay, are we on the right track with the music? And most of the time it's a yes. So, and that way they have a little something to look back on while they're waiting on like the whole thing too.
Yeah.
So, I just listening to it on its own, I feel like it can kind of hurt the process.
Yeah.
So I just kind of
Oh, that
all
makes
of it.
perfect sense. And
Yeah.
you're right. They're more likely to, they're associating with other things. They're associating with positive emotions when they actually hear the music. So then it's like, oh, well, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you just send the song, they're like, I know that from a different context. Then
Yeah.
yeah,
Or like, oh, I don't know this. Is kind of weird. Like I've never heard of this person before.
yeah,
Yeah. Which most of them haven't. So
yeah. Well, and that is interesting too. About that's kind of coming back to like an art thing where part of when people hire us, they're hiring us for that outcome, and part of that outcome is a science, right? But there's art to it, and we do it in our own unique way. Nobody DJs exactly like I do. They don't pick exactly the same songs. They don't do exactly the same mixes. They're not the same person as me, right? The relationship with the couple is different. The questions they ask, the relationship with the crowd is different. Even their observational skills are different. The things they're noticing or not noticing. And so the songs are going to be different every night, a little bit, based on the crowd's response. But if I let the couple, I always say couples can have creative control. You can give me the songs you love, and we'll make it a priority to play them. You can give me the songs if you play them, you're fired. You hit the songs you hate. Don't play them, kind of thing. And then I'll take it from there. That's kind of the creative part that I'll give me what you want, what you don't want, and then I know what you really want is a great dance floor, a great dance party. And I have a lot of experience in knowing what works or what doesn't work. And sometimes I'm surprised. Oh, I didn't think that song would hit, but it does. So that means that these other songs might hit too. But it is kind of, it's a guessing game, but the guesses aren't usually that big of a stretch because I already have, thousands of hours of experience and observing. But if I let a couple just give me the exact order, all the songs, it's going to be exactly that. And some I hit and some might not, but it's not going to be what I do. It's not the art of what I do. It's just I'm playing the music for you.
right.
Which to me, that's not really a DJ. That's just someone press and play.
Playlist.
Yeah, but that's got to be similar on your end too, where it's, if I let the couple pick the music to this, they may not like the actual video then. But if I kind of know what you want, you take that input, you find that as well. If you take the input, but ultimately you decide, and then how about this? Yeah. And then of course you're willing to make tweaks and changes, and it's the same thing. If I'm playing stuff, we did a wedding 2 weeks ago. I was played a few songs. The couple's like, we just want to stick to ours, no problem. So then I was like a little bit tighter creative control, but then I just operated inside that realm.
Yeah.
I knew better what they wanted after that. So
It's definitely, like you said, an art, and being able to balance kind of like the energy you're giving and the energy you're receiving almost like through the music.
Yeah.
And so when you have to stick to that set list or a specific song that they give you, then it's like, okay, I'm much more limited with what I can create within this space of this song in this music versus being able to blend with other things that maybe you hear, but they don't hear it because they don't have that trained ear per se.
yeah.
So,
But they could take the same exact footage. If I took your footage and I tried to, I would be a totally different edit. It would have a totally different feel.
yeah.
And it's the same with DJing. And if so that's what I'm saying, every wedding, because every couple's different, what they like is different. But there's a lot of songs that overlap, just like there's a lot of moments that overlap when you're shooting and filming. And it's, to me, it's really about being flexible and inflexible with kind of the art piece of it. I know that there's people and wedding vendors that are like, we're really inflexible. If you're hiring us, this is what we do. That's it. Like, we're not really going to take your input. This is just what we do, And then there's wedding vendors who are like, we'll do whatever you want all the time. And even if it's bad, we're going to do it, And so I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle there, just over. When I started, I was like, let's do it all. And now just more and more, I'm like, nope, I think I know what I'm doing here. Yeah. And I want to do a good job. And I think that's what you ultimately want. You want the outcome, but the ones who were like, the couples were like, well, give me the exact set list in order, all of these songs. I'm like, okay, if that song hits, great. But what if none of those songs are hitting?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Then I'm like, is it okay if I go through and do that? Do you have meetings with your couples before and then throughout the process of the editing for that input, or how do you handle that?
So I meet with them at least twice beforehand, and I just get like as many details as I can from them. Like, about them as a couple, their individual personalities, their wedding day, their goals for the day, their goals for the video itself, and like the memories that they prioritize, I guess. And then so I haven't really met with people like during the editing process.
It may not be, necessary. I don't even.
But that's like really interesting. I've never really thought about that. It's more so like I'll do the sneak peek, send it to them, get feedback on that. And then I did have a couple who gave like really like detailed, like constructive feedback after I sent them their sneak peek. Cause I also I send it to them before I post it to make sure that it's okay. And it's not that it wasn't okay, but they're like, there's a few things that we're just hoping to see to like speak more to us. And I was like, okay, yeah. And she sent me a list and I'd never gotten it before. And so at first I was like, do I suck? Like I had like that imposter syndrome. I was like, oh no, they hate it. They hate me. They hate what I did. But it was just like, no, like just something to enhance it that I hadn't thought of. So I was like, okay. And I made those changes. And there was one change that I couldn't make. And it was like more of like a Photoshop-y kind of thing that affected the quality of the frame. So I just substituted the frame. But yeah, I did that. And then I was like, heck, I like it better. And I was like, I'm like, you're right. Like, I'm never going to say absolutely not. I'm not going to change it for you because it's your video.
Sure.
So yeah, like that kind of stuff. Like I encourage people to give me feedback, good or bad. And then from there, I just take it and I grow from it. And then, yeah, after that sneak peek, it's pretty much just me working on it and just like, giving updates on delivery and then, delivering and seeing what they think. Sometimes people ghost me after I deliver it. Other times people will give me like a paragraph or just like a thanks. And it depends on the people that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot after the wedding of meetings.
Yeah. Probably with good reason. And I can't imagine, it's like somebody, behind the turntables with me while I'm mixing at their wedding. I want them to be out there dancing. I don't want them behind the DJ booth telling me, okay, now this song, and now this song. And, I don't want them standing over me while I'm working.
Yeah. It's like, stop. Please stop watching me.
But I do want to know if there's something I'm doing that they don't like and there's some change I can make. And that's what I tell the couples when I meet them before. It's like, look, I'm flexible. I really am. And so tell me what you want. I won't take it personally. And that's what happened. This bride's like, just don't play, I was playing 2 or 3 songs that I thought they connected well. The crowd's loving them. But she wanted more of her, just stick to our list. No problem. So, yeah. And actually, it went really well the rest of the night. It was a great dance floor, good party. So that's cool. And it made that adjustment. So she's like, I'm just particular. I was like, it's your wedding. You should be. I'm fine with that. So
yeah, there's a difference when it's like the people, like when it's your couple that you're working for, like giving that feedback, and then like some random person who, and I know you guys have talked about it a lot, they're like thinking about themselves and not
trying to take over
the couple or the party. And it's like, this isn't about you. Yeah. Like, but if a bride were to come up and say something, it's like, okay, different story.
Yeah.
So
it's customer service, but there's, technically the guests are part customers too, for the experience, and I take their input, but I take it about as seriously, as it should be in that moment. But, have you ever have, people who, they're not crazy about the edit, and do you have a process for handling that? And on both sides, where, I'll just do you have a process for handling that?
I haven't had any to where anyone's been like, I absolutely hate this, redo the whole thing. It's more been like sections where they're like, oh, I don't love that. And I am very like emotionally attached to everything I do. So I'm just like, it takes me a while to like process what they're saying and accept it, just because like I am a perfectionist and I take, longer to do these things. So then when people don't like it, I'm just like, oh man, how do I fix it? Because I thought it was fine, or I thought it was perfect. But because it is like a creative thing, well, it's not going to be perfect because there's not an exact science. Like it's not like I can build this microphone and say whether or not it's perfect because there's a certain thing to follow, but with a video, it's different. So, I'll always take that feedback, and I just need to kind of step away from it for a little bit and come in with a fresh mind. because when you sit there and look at it for so long and listen to the same song over and over and over and over again,
Yeah.
you know, you need to take that step back, especially when there is a correction to be made, at least in my eyes, because they have that fresh perspective of seeing it for the first time in their first impression. And it's much different than my impression that's been working on it. So kind of allowing a little bit of space to be able to approach it with a fresher perspective, like almost forget some details about it for a while, come back to it, and then look at what their feedback is and be like, okay, I see what they're saying. And how can I make this adjustment to where it's still going to make sense with the story? Quality wise isn't going to be affected negatively. And then to where like the music, the visual, the dialogue is still all matching. The one that like really comes to mind, I did a Nigerian Irish American wedding a couple of years ago.
Oh man.
And they did 2 ceremonies that day. So it was, they did an outside like American traditional ceremony. And then they did a traditional Nigerian ceremony. And have you ever been to a Nigerian wedding?
Chris did one.
Okay.
I want to say 3 years ago.
Okay. So it's like, it's very intense. There's lots of details. But basically like the bride and the groom both like dance in to the hall, like with their parties. And there's like a dowry, giving up, you know, like presenting gifts like for the bride. Like this groom had actually gone to Nigeria, bought in a goat and presented it to her family in Nigeria to be able to marry her. So it wasn't there in Maryville, but it was, they like went through the whole process. So because there were so many like moving parts and different cultures, like in that, I did as much research as I could. Like I had multiple calls with her and her explaining to me like what it was that the culture is, what is typically done, but then also like what they were able to do because her whole family wasn't able to come to the wedding. Cause it was a lot closer to COVID too. So, you know, I was in that process. I did actually communicate with her. Like I sent her 3 songs that I thought were fitting. And I wanted to make sure they were like culturally appropriate, and they were, and there was really only one that she liked. So I was like, okay, I used that song for like the more upbeat, you know, Nigerian, ceremony, and it was like quicker beats. So I was like cutting to the quicker beats. And then she was like, yeah, I don't really like that. When it was all said, she was like, I don't really like how quick that is. So I was like, okay. So I slowed it down by doing like every 2 beats or I think I did every 2 beats to start. And then I changed it to every 4 beats so that you could just see what was going on longer. And it was less like in your face. And I did that, and I don't think she liked it. I think I just changed the song entirely. Cause at first it was, okay, we want to like have a balance of the different like things going on in this wedding and the different cultures in your marriage. And then I think it kind of changed to be less of that and more just like a, you know, wedding video, just nice, timeless, not so upbeat for that half of it, which was fine. Like I still liked it, and I'll never send anybody a video that I don't like. And because if I don't like it, how do I expect them to like it? So yeah, it's definitely like depending on the situation, the wedding, the couple, it's different when it comes to corrections. And luckily I haven't had to do too many, but that was definitely one where it was harder because I mean, I'm not Nigerian. So, treating that situation to where I was respecting everybody and treating it with grace. But then also like just having to understand like, yeah, creatively, I think that this is the best thing for the video, but it's her video. It's not mine.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like, that's something that you have to come to terms with. Like, yes, I am the person who is doing this for a living, but you just got to get over yourself sometimes and, you know, serve them. And, that's definitely something that's hard when it's like you care so much about what you do.
Yes. you put a lot of yourself into it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, this is not for me.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, you do your best, and when your best isn't good enough, you have to change direction sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, it's a very hard thing to do as a person in any kind of art, really.
You have to detach yourself from the art you're doing.
Yeah.
But still care enough about the art to do the extra little bits that you're good at. It's a tough thing. Doing this job has taught me to detach a little bit, to stop being so, like, take it so personally if people aren't dancing.
Yeah.
So now it's been more freeing, and it helped me be more observational and to, because I wasn't so zeroed in on what I was doing wrong. I started looking at what can I do right, what can I do differently.
Yeah.
This not necessarily, because I've learned you can do the exact same set list night in, night out, and some crowds are going to love it, some crowds are going to hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. I realized after a while, and I was like, oh, but it's when you're first starting out as DJ, you're just like, they're not dancing, and it hurts, and you're like, oh, and you have that imposter. Do I even know what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be tough. Back when I used to manage and run a DJ company, and they also owned a videography company, and would do sales for them and stuff and manage that side. And we were doing 3 or 4 wedding films a weekend, like shooting. And so we had a pretty set schedule that we had to get the edit, get it back to them. And so, most of the customers, I'd say 9 out of 10, clients, it's like, oh, they love the film, only a few notes, no problem. But there's ones where it was like this, and then we go edit that, and then there's more, and then there's more. It's kind of a give a mouse a cookie, There's just, we've really felt like with some clients, we were opening ourselves up to criticism and additional work that was still not going to be appreciated and enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And so we had to set a boundary. You get 2 rounds of edits, After that, we feel that this is a professional quality. We've delivered on it. But if you let them, it'll take 6 months more of editing. That's more hours, more work, more time. In the meantime, you've got to be shooting and filming other editing other weddings. So it's tough when a customer wants to spend more time with you than the typical customers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not careful, they're going to take up, that one customer is going to take up 90% of your time and money. And they're still not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So just setting those limits and that kind of thing. Do you do anything on that end? Have you run into anything like that where you have to kind of tell someone this is good?
Yeah. I can't really think of a time where I've ever told somebody knock it off.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that I will run into that. And that is something that I do have to be careful about, because I'm very much like a people pleaser, and I have a very hard time saying no. So, just trying to keep that in the back of my head, knowing that healthy boundary of okay, I'm serving you to the best of my ability, but also I can't work magic. And that, what that reminds me of is when the day goes a certain way and people expect a certain outcome, but then it's well, the day didn't go that way. So I can't make something up
that never happened.
I can enhance a moment, I can manipulate the timing of the day, right? I can make it look like you were in this place and then walked to this place within a minute, but really you didn't. It took you 3 hours to go from one place to the next. But when it's oh, well, I really wanted to see, my grandma crying. Well, your grandma never cried. So, and not that anyone's ever said that to me. But you know what I mean?
That's an example of an impossible shot that you don't
Yeah.
have that shot because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even like, some people, when you go for like a certain like vibe and aesthetic for something, you can think it up all you want. But if like the space doesn't allow for it, or like maybe like it's the attire or the decor or even the lighting in the day, like there's so many different moving pieces, the venue, maybe the venue's not serving you and your vibe, so it's like, and that's why it takes people so long to plan weddings nowadays, because it's like all those things, they're trying to like line it up to be as perfect as possible and like be, your dream wedding. And it's, it's the venue, the decor, your vendors, the people that you have there, how many people do you have there? Even like the furniture, the dress, like the makeup, the hair, all these different things. And then, okay, you've got the weather.
Yeah.
Where in the country are you? What's your scenery kind of thing? And then, how do you feel that day? And then you have the emotional aspect, that energy that's being put out there is what I'm capturing. So not only do you have like those visual details, but you have the emotion side of it. And then putting all that together, it's like most of the time, no problem. It's a wedding day. It's the best day of your life.
Yeah.
Like, like good vibes. But sometimes, you might have like a mother-in-law come in that just really like gets on your last nerve and takes somebody off the rest of the day. And then that energy's out there. And then people aren't, dancing around the bridal suite and laughing and telling jokes and stories in the morning because that vibe's not there. It didn't happen. I can't make it happen. So that's not what is going to be reflected in your video.
Yeah, it's like I look upset in all these shots. I'm like, I have a lot of footage of you being upset, because you were very upset that day.
I don't think I've ever had like a cranky bride, but there's definitely like been moments, and sometimes I'm like, I don't need to be filming you right now. Like, whoever it is, I did have a moment that I kind of like made, which was really cool. And it kind of set the tone for the morning. I felt like once we got to that point, the photographer wasn't there yet. She still had probably 30 minutes until she was supposed to show up. I got there super early just because I was like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what this place looks like. And I knew that the bride had a lot of details to capture. So I did that. And then the girls had all their hair and makeup done. And we went outside to get like a robe shot just so I would be out of the way of the photographer when she got there. And I was like, could we do something really quick? Could we just have all of the bridesmaids have a moment with the bride and just kind of like express your feelings towards her right now on this day? If you want to say a prayer, it was a very religious couple. I was like, if you guys want to say a prayer, pray over her, and just kind of, like talk to her, give her well wishes for the day. I think that would be really cool, like before she gets dressed and stuff. And we passed around the microphone, and they were all sobbing, and it was just like, it was a very emotional group of women, and they were all just like so well spoken and down to earth. And I mean, this bride was amazing, and it's like no one had anything but good things to say about her, rightfully so. And so like I had a feeling, one of her bridesmaids, I'd filmed her wedding a couple years prior, so I knew how, her personality, and they were really close. I'm like, if these people are anything like these two that I know, I was like, you're just going to have so much good content, like so many good like audio bits, but also like such a cool moment for her and like her friends like rallying around her and her soon to be husband. And that's what happened. And it took us probably like 15 minutes. And they were like, and they did bring up a good point. They're like, why'd you do this after we got our makeup done? Whose decision was this? And I was like, I'm sorry, but also like, I don't want to film you without your makeup done.
Yes, right. Yes.
But it was so heartfelt. And when I went in to like edit it, I just kept crying. And I told her, I was like, I'm sorry, it's taking me a while to get through this because you guys have me an emotional wreck and I have to keep regrouping. But yeah, she was like, that was one of the best moments of the day. Just being able to like stop for a second and talk to each other and give hugs and
connect and really share a moment. It's a beautiful thing that you help create just by like, I need to get some footage. This is a good idea. Let's do this.
Yeah.
It being a cool, powerful thing. That's awesome.
And it's definitely not something you can do with everybody, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have to have the right.
Especially if people are like, I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you're going to have people like that. It's like, I don't know why they handed me the mic,
Yeah. Well, and I did that when I went to the guys first that day.
Oh, man.
And we went outside. They were tossing football around. I was like, do you guys have any like cool stories you want to share? Well wishes for him and his bride. And they're like, oh, I don't know. So I was like, okay, we don't have to do that. Like, I dropped it. I'm not going to push and force something. So, but yeah, on the girl side, it was very different. And
I mean, to me, that's got to be so much better for their memories from years to come to have those clips. And you never know how long any of us have, and to have somebody on film, like sharing a really sweet moment.
Yeah.
You can go back and when you miss that person and see that footage, and remember and put yourself back there emotionally that day, what that felt like, and oh man, reconnect to it all.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings me kind of like speeches. That's like, we talk probably the most about speeches on this podcast because it really does make or break the energy of a wedding. You can take this fully energized. We introduced, everyone's so excited for this couple, and then somebody gives a 45-minute boring speech that just drains the energy out of the room. Do you have any advice about speeches or things you've experienced about speeches that, I mean, because you're literally recording, and that's going to be part of the product you're giving us. Those. Any thoughts on speeches and from the videography kind of perspective of?
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts on speeches.
Sure.
Someone like a couple of years ago said something like, speeches are to videographers what family portraits are to photographers.
That's good.
And I wish I remember who exactly it was. It was probably John Bunn or Nick Miller, one of the two. And I'm just like, that is so true, because like, I don't have to capture the family photos, but I understand like how like on point and efficient like the photographer has to be about that. And like, you have to get that because like, that's what people are putting on their walls. Like that's the moment where you have your family all together. And for speeches, like these are your maid of honor, best man, father of the bride, like people that you trust to speak about you, sharing whatever it is they're sharing for. It could be 2 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be 20. And I have to stay like locked and loaded, focused, like just so steady. I stopped filming like the speaker on a tripod. I started handheld, went to tripod because I was like, oh, my arms are tired. Switched back to handheld because people pace. And the last thing I want to do is be like panning with my tripod. Yeah, walk off camera so I miss it. Or like even moving my tripod and have it like squeak while the whole room is like quiet listening. Like, I don't want that. I'm supposed to be invisible. So, yeah, just like handheld is like the easiest way to go. But then when people keep going, I'm just like, oh my gosh. So like I'm capturing the reaction of the bride and groom or whoever it is getting married, the speaker, and then also like trying to look around and scan for reactions for people too. If it's like an impactful, like laughs, tears. But what I feel the most strongly about with speeches is that it doesn't have to be your best man or your maid of honor. Cause like you said a minute ago, if I were to hand someone the mic, like, oh, share something. And they're like, oh, I don't know what to say. That's kind of what you're doing when some people putting them in that position of, oh, you have to give a speech. You have to give a toast.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't know. And
Terrible fear of public speaking.
Yeah. It's like, if you are like deathly afraid of speaking in front of people, that is not something you should be doing. Like if you have something that you want to share with them, maybe like at the rehearsal dinner or just like in private, like that could be so much better than like having them get up in front of people, because then you have like the emotional side, playing a factor in that. And like sometimes you might have a bridesmaid that has something amazing to say, like very like well spoken. Like if you these people, like you wouldn't have them standing up with you if you didn't know them. So like having those people that and like really thinking about like, okay, like what's their personality like how do they do in this kind of public setting if speeches are part of your wedding? And then, like what kind of speaker are they? What kind of things are they going to have to say about us? Are they going to just talk about when we played basketball together in 6th grade, or how we grew up next door to each other? Or are they going to talk about like the kind of person I am? Or, like the best speeches I feel like is when they tie in like those memories into the type of person that these people are, and then why they work so well together. I feel like that's such a well-crafted speech, because it's like you're tying in these different moments from through their life, but it's building up to like this milestone in their life, and you're making it make sense. And then for me, like that's awesome because in the video it makes sense.
Yes.
So yeah, just like really thinking about the people that you are having, like tell more of your story from like their perspective. That's all that they're really doing. And if you don't have anyone to do that, like that's okay. Like just have someone get up there, thank you guys, thank the guests for coming. Cause like that is part of like the formality of it is you want to make sure you're thanking the people who are there, like supporting you and just like taking the time to celebrate your marriage. And that, like, yeah, that's a part of it. But if you're wanting to have more of like who you are shared or about like your relationship with your partner shared, but you don't want to be the one speaking, you want someone else to talk about it, then really think about who that is. Because if I'm there getting it on video, that's there forever, and so you want to make sure that that's a job well done. And then it feeds into, of course, the dance floor. But like usually like the timeline of the reception, you have speeches happen before the dance floor opens up. And so, and whether dinner's in between that or not, I don't know, or during. But then like that can affect, like we were talking about earlier, like the energy again. And if you have a 45-minute long speech, I don't know about you, but I'm going to get tired.
Yeah.
If I'm in a dimly lit reception hall, a candlelit dinner, someone's drinking wine, like that makes me want to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So it's got to, like, you got to think about like you are presenting to a room of people. Like you have to be able to get their attention and then keep them hanging on to what you're saying. And so like that can't be something where you're like, oh, I'm going to wing it. Like you can't wing that. And some people have, but it's very rare where it like happens successfully, I feel like. So yeah, just really communicating with the people that you want to speak before they speak. Sometimes you hear dads like, oh, she gave me like a 5-minute, deadline, timeline. And it's like, well, there's a reason for that. So I do communicate with my couples like, hey, if you're going to have someone speak, like make sure you communicate them like what your priority is for that part of the day. Like, is timeliness something that you want to stay on top of? Is, like what they can versus can't say? Like, okay, are there children in attendance? We probably shouldn't be cursing up a storm.
Yeah.
Like those kind of things you got to consider. And so like that, it can set the mood for the rest of the evening, or at least the first start after that. And how willing people are to get up and dance and be energetic. Yeah. And it also can set the mood when it comes to the video. If I have people saying, I really want to hear the speeches through the video. It really depends. Like, okay, well, what are they going to say? Like, does it make sense in a wedding video? Yeah.
Are they sharing embarrassing, terrible stories that you don't want to be remember?
Right. Yeah. So it all, like speeches affect a lot when you really think about it.
Well, you've assembled this whole group on this one day to like celebrate your wedding, and so when somebody's up there talking to the group, you're basically helping to unify and create that group identity. And the best speakers do this really well, where they keep it short and sweet, they keep it on topic, but they engage the crowd with connecting to these people to talk about them. So you're honoring them. Let's talk about this couple in an honoring way, where it's a gift to the couple. But it's also the idea, the best speakers will help you. Like, I don't even know this person, but now I feel like I do with the way they told that story about this person.
Those are the best.
They captured the character of that person so well, and they did it in a way that I can easily connect with and relate to through my own experience, right? Those are the best speeches. And then everybody at the end of that speech feels connected, warm, happy, easygoing, and re-energized, right? But if it's so long and they're given a TED Talk, symposium, or whatever, or they're just listing all these endless accolades, it's boring, it's exhausting, it's draining, and it sucks the energy out of the room. And then, because it went so long, now we have to serve dinner or whatever. And so then dinner and it just cuts into that. And like you said, by the time we're ready to start dancing, everybody's asleep halfway, or they're just dying to like, let's dance, let's party. So that you can have both ways. But generally, if the speeches are short and sweet, it's going to be a much better dance floor than if they're long and boring and or even worse than that, because occasionally you'll get ones where it's awkward. They say something super offensive or some really embarrassing, like just thing they should not have said. And everybody feels very awkward. It makes them feel very uncomfortable. And they are collectively feeling uncomfortable. And people typically want to avoid those feelings. So they're like, when can we go home?
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I want to leave.
Yes. This is awkward. Yeah. We've all watched The Office, you know, you just that cringe moments, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So this has been so much fun. Let's definitely do it again soon. Is there anything we haven't covered? I keep thinking there's other topics we talked about.
One other thing I wanted to say about speeches is, like, from the video standpoint, the placement of the people speaking within the room and, like, the placement of the speaker to the couple. What I've started doing is making it to where, and a lot of the times pulling the couple out behind the table if they're, like, in a big table with their bridal party, to where they're sat, but then they're angled to where they're facing the person speaking, and to where it's like conversational, like how we are right now. That is something that I started doing, and at first, like, telling people about it ahead of time, they're like, what are you talking about? But when I explain, like, it's more conversational, it's more comfortable for you. And if you do have someone who is more nervous to give a speech, that is like a thing of comfort for them, because they can just sit there, focus on talking to you and not like standing up, presenting to a whole room. Like, they're talking to the people that they're there for. And that helps a lot also with like the lighting setup. At least for me. And then like the camera angles too, getting the bride and groom and then the person speaking. Because if someone's standing right next to me, talking to me, I'm looking at them like that. Yeah. And they are looking down at me like this. And so, like, not only is that uncomfortable, but it's not like the most flattering angle. And so especially when attention's on you, people are taking photos and videos of you, like, you want to look and feel confident in your body language. And so, creating more space in between and setting it up to where it's conversational is something that I've started doing, and making sure, again, like photographer, DJ are on the same page with that. Like, hey, I need a second to pull these chairs for them and set them up. Usually people are totally fine with it. If anything, they're just like confused why I'm doing it because they haven't seen it, but it helps a lot. And that way I can also set it up to where like the background is more pleasant, because sometimes they're just like up against a wall. And then a lot of times too, if I'm pulling them out from that table, you see your bridal party behind you. And so you see their reactions mixed in as well. And that's a really cool thing, because then you're just like, it's like more memories within the same moment. Almost
capturing even more information in the same shot.
So
that's really good advice. That's really that has to make a huge impact.
It's definitely more comfortable for people involved. Like, it's weird because it's new. But then once you get into it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And you're not even thinking about it, because either way, like, the couple's sitting down, and either way the person's standing up speaking. So it's just a matter of where that attention is and that spacing in the room. So
we have that come up all the time. But for different reasons. For us, it's like, if I'm going to be handing this person the microphone, I want to make sure they are not standing right in front of my speakers, so it's not feeding back. Because what happens then is I can't boost the gains up, make it louder. If they're very quiet and they're right in front of my speakers, I can't do a lot to boost their voice so people can hear it. Without it, it's going to screech, you know. And a lot of people don't know how to hold a microphone, so they'll have it down here. And again, I'll try to explain and talk to people, but they forget or they don't do it or whatever, they ignore. So lately I've been talking to photo video people before, where are we standing them? Where are we putting them? Because what I'll do is I'll go over there and I'll go, come to me, and I'll stand right on my mark and I'll stand here, look here, you know, I'll help kind of guide them. But I've had a couple of photo video people like, oh, do you have a mic stand? And I was like, yes, but just so you know, that's just a prop to these people doing these speeches. They're going to move it. They're going to probably walk away from it. They're going to, you know, I've also had people ask me for like a lectern or like a podium, you know, something. I was like, you don't want that. You're going to be standing behind. You're not giving a TED talk, you know. And that means that you have multiple, you know, shorter speech, a few cards or a scrollable thing on your phone. Don't do pages and pages of speech, you know.
I've heard of people, like some videographers recommending like do the mic stand, like bring your own mic stand
Sure.
kind of thing. But instead of it being something to where people are still moving it, taping the microphone to the mic stand and then taping the mic stand to the ground.
Yeah, they can't move.
If you can. So that way, yeah, like can't move, and just like explaining to the people before they go up, like, hey, like this is a situation. And I've thought about getting my own mic stand, but ultimately I'm like, I don't want to be adding clutter to
I don't
the
personally
space.
like it. I think it looks
Yeah.
bad. I personally I'd rather not have a mic stand and have them hold the mic.
Yeah.
It's more natural anyways. It's not how people speak. But again, so the last wedding, same thing. We set it up, and I was like, I can't control. And then sure enough, they literally, the father of the bride grabbed the mic, walked all the way over right in front of my speaker so he could face the bride on the dance floor. And of course, he was like too far away, and I couldn't crank it up. And then, you know, every person, the maid of honor wanted to be, she took the mic off the stand and went back behind the head table. And then the best man went over and used the mic stand. So it was just kind of like everybody everywhere. But the videographer, he had a camera already set up for that initial shot that he did not get because they immediately pulled it out of frame.
Well, and like
Just pulled an audible, just the person, you know,
yeah.
giving the speech.
And when you have a camera set up, like a lot of the times people set up a camera because there's not a physical person there to get that angle.
Yeah.
And so to have to try and like book it across the room through the crowd of people seated at their tables and not draw attention to yourself and adjust that angle, it takes a couple minutes, but also it's like you're risking like drawing negative attention to a moment that's about them, not me.
Even worse, he moved the microphone in front of our speakers, so I had to, you know. Then I was in the background of his shot. So everybody's shooting because he's standing right in front of me. So then my speakers are here and he's standing right in front of me. So then me and my assistant had to just leave.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't control the volume for the rest of the speech because I would be in the shot moving. It'd be distracting.
I would have like ducked down.
Yeah. So that's what I initially did to try to get as loud as I could. And then I'm like, I'm out. I'm not going to touch it because I'm just going to be in the shot. It's going to look wrong. But he was never supposed to be standing there. We had it.
Yeah, that's something that people don't realize is like there is a method to the madness. Like there's a reason that we don't have you guys standing over here. Yeah. Like there's a lot of technical, and it's not their job to know that either.
And if he had asked, then I would have said no. But I didn't think he would do that, you know. But he wanted to be facing the bride. So I was like, okay, you know, we just made the best of it. But
it's a live event.
In the photo video, I laughed about it because it's like I told you that was gonna. I said almost every time I've set a mic stand, they've moved it.
Yeah.
You know, because the whole point they're like is they won't move it, but I'm like they're gonna definitely move it, man. But yeah, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on. Definitely come back, talk more on this. For people who are interested in working with you, what's the best way they can kind of get in touch?
Through my website, raycroftrecordings.com. I have a contact page on there. And then I'm on Instagram, Facebook, kind of TikTok. I need to get better at TikTok, but yeah, raycroftrecordings.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been the DJ Insider Podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Maycen.
And we'll see you at your wedding. Thanks much.